were talking about like certain extreme roles in your past, and there's one in particular that I remember seeing on cable that really gave me chills that you did.
Oh,
And I
really?
don't think people ask you about it much. It's called In the Line of Duty, The Price of Vengeance,
Oh, yeah,
where you
yeah.
play Johnny Moore, the
Right,
guy who
right,
kills Michael Gross from Family Ties with the Mac 10.
right, right,
Um,
right.
so not even so much getting into that character because that was pretty well with you in the clown makeup and having to do
Uh-huh.
all that. But I always remember the last scene when you're in the courtroom after you've been sentenced, you give like this big prophetic speech.
Right, right.
How did you prepare to get into that moment, knowing that was like a big like this is the close of the chapter of the story?
Yeah. Well, when you're studying the scripts, and you always, at least I do, I pinpoint things that I have to get right because they really kind of tell you more about who the character is. You can go through a script and you can see, not that I'm not saying some scenes are more important than others. They all are equally important, but they have the value. There's some scenes that have you just got to get them right because they're markers, they're progressions in the storytelling, you know, and you want to make sure that you get it right. So in that particular moment, I wanted to show that he was a sociopathic guy. He had no sense of right and wrong. He had no sense of justice. He had no remorse for the loss that he put upon that family. And what they went through with his kids lost their dad. He really was. So I wanted to get that right. How do I go for that? So it I just came up with I don't know how to put it. That's what I was going for, the fact that this is a sociopathic personality. And, you know, his sincerity is 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 how it's displayed. You know, he feels put upon. He feels misused. He feels misunderstood. You know, and, and when you see him plot with his gang members and you see him plot this all out, all his actions, but yet he has this sort of attitude at the end that, you realize, he was a hopeless case.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I saw in it, and would go for it. But you have to make, like they teach us when we're in acting school, about making choices about characters, about what these moments are about, how they fit into the story, and you're telling the story. So that it kind of comes out of that training to sort of, what we used to call it, uh, like a musician is his scale, his you're scoring the role, and what notes do you hit along the way. So that was the last note, and it was like, okay, what is it I want to say in this moment about who he is and who I am? But also by that time, you've kind of embodied the character. You hopefully you've gotten inside the way the character thinks and feels, and it's kind of like an automatic thing. It's not something you have to really overthink. It comes out the way it's supposed to. But I just remember thinking of that last scene, how he just really didn't have any sense of the gravity of what he had done to others. It wasn't about that at all. It was really just about, hey, I've been mistreated, I've been misunderstood, you know, totally sociopathic. And that's the way people are, some people just don't have a conscience, you know, and that's the way I saw that character.
Wow.
I guess I have another acting question. Okay, so you've had a long career. You've worked with, I've noticed like certain people over and again, like, Danny Glover on Witness and Honey Dripper. You work with obviously Eddie Murphy, another 48 Hours Life, and now Taye Diggs with, All American. And I can't remember the name of the show you both were on before, though.
Right.
But okay, when you're working,
Murder in the First.
Yeah, Murder in the First.
Yeah.
But okay, when you're working with actors, obviously, they're front and center, the star. You're more, supporting. Mm-hmm. And so, most of the attention is more on them. And, your job is, obviously do your job, make your character memorable, but also kind of be their foundation.
Right.
Now, when you, is it much different when, let's say, you're doing something like, let's say, again, Brooklyn Bridge, or when you're like guest starring on Shameless, and most of your scenes are with more of a younger actor who might be a novice in the business, and obviously like they're more the regular, you're just guest starring. Do you find that like in instances like that, is it more you have to work out a rhythm with the actor, or are they just like you, just as professional, prepared for whatever the dynamics of the scenes are?
It's the latter. You're just as professional, prepared for whatever the dynamics of the scene are, and there's no difference. I mean, I don't treat a younger actor any different than a more seasoned, older actor. I mean, like you mentioned, Shameless. I mean, those are young actors, but they're the leads on the show. They're good actors. So it was a challenging show. I mean, it was a good show. So you go in with a professional attitude, and you always have that because we're all equal, in that sense, and yeah, there are times when you're there to support, and generally you always are in a guest star, but there are times you do get opportunities to, in a guest star capacity, to express yourself and illuminate things within the story that need to be illuminated and brought out, and that help support them at the same time, moves the story forward. But basically, you're always going in to do your job and be a professional, to your best of your ability.
Okay, and also I was wondering, just to go back to the beginning, what, I guess, role do you feel like, or do you notice you get most recognized in the streets for, that people are like, hey, I remember you in such and such?
Well, it's funny. That's always the most recent thing. Like right now, among a certain generation, it's All American. It's Grandpa Willie from All American. Life hung around for a long time. I mean, my wife and I were on a train coming from Boston to New York, and we met some people who had seen Life, and they were going to a funeral, and the guy who was being burialized, if that's the word, or he was such a fan of Life that they had recordings of lines from the movie running during the funeral. So that's way out, but I can remember, another 48 Hours for a long time I would be recognized from, or Witness, or, so it's always what's the most recent, since you're not that, like you say, that the lead guy who's doing stuff, who's out there all the time. With me, it ends up being my most recent credit, if it's something that's considerably successful,
Yeah, I read in an interview somewhere that there was a point in your career where it seemed like the work was kind of drying up a bit, and you had an offer to become a drama teacher, and you passed it up so you could start doing more commercial work. I guess maybe for actors that are starting out, and sometimes there's that sort of discouragement when they're not getting the work the way they want, or maybe they want to get into the union, but there's always something that's holding them back. What advice would you give to an aspiring actor starting out now?
Well, it all gets down to how much you have to have it. Remember when I mentioned earlier that I had gotten bit by that bug, and I just couldn't shake it as a kid growing up, and then there've been several times when you look at it and you go, oh, this is not going to work out, you want to walk away. But it gets down to how much you really love what you're trying to be successful at. And it gets down to also what you consider success. When I was offered that job, it was because we had our kids in private school and things weren't going that well for either of us at that time. And I was looking at the possibility of having to take them out of that school, which I didn't want to do. And I had a good relationship with the administration. And I started subbing. And then I got that offer to be a drama teacher and an assistant admissions. And so I was considering it very heavily, and I went in and had a meeting and I sat down. And so after we talked, the last thing I asked, I said, oh, by the way, what's the salary? How much does this position pay? And they told me, and I kind of started laughing. I was like, okay. I'm thinking what they're offering me is like where I'm at now. That's why I'm here, because, they were asking me to put this ceiling on my income that I'm going through a rough time, but I don't want to put a ceiling on it. I want to, so I passed on that, and I can remember when I was shooting Life and how much fun I was having, Life, and then right into A Lesson Before Dying. I would think about that experience. And this is what I would say to young actors. When I thought about that experience and passing, I thought about what I would have missed had I said yes. I thought about those experiences that I now can sit back and think about and answer questions about and, have some pride in and have some, it wouldn't have happened. I would have put my ceiling right there, at that number that they were telling me, which I don't want to mention because I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging, what I mean. But it was like, so that's it gets down to your own belief, in yourself, your own love for what you're doing. And I really believe that your commitment to it, you're doing it for the right reasons, it rewards you. Even doing an interview like this makes me reflect and realize how blessed I've been. You start talking about, oh, you work with this guy, you did this, you did things that I don't think about anymore, and you forget, how successful you have been because you're always looking outside at other people and you forget what you're doing. It's been pretty good.
Sure.
So,
There's so many actors that burn out because they want to be the lead, they want to be the headliner, and
right.
they don't quite get there because they don't really stop and say, look, just do the work, stay in it, and then let the parts grow. But for yourself, you've done some interesting roles that at times have stolen from the lead actors, so that's something that you got to really pat yourself on the back for.
Yeah. And I tell you, one of the things that saved me was when I talked to my dad. It was the last conversation we ever had together, and we both knew it would be. And I was about 20 years old, and I asked him, should I continue this desire? Should I stick with this? And he says to me, he says, Brent, you've always talked about it. He said, if you make it, the money will be pretty good. If you don't, so what? It's just a path you're meant to follow. And I remember thinking about that sometime after he passed. And I thought, wow, he took failure off the table. basically what he was saying was, you just got to be true to yourself in life, and whatever comes, but be true to yourself. And when he said that's just the path, I think that's just the path you're meant to follow. He's just saying you just go down a road and you see what's there for you. That's life. That's the way it is. You know, you don't know what's there for you until you go down the road. And whatever's there, you can handle it, you know, because in the end, we're all going to end up at the end, you know. So it's the journey that's important. You know, it's the journey. And the victories and the defeats and the disappointments and the, you know, all of that's all a part of it. You know, and everybody has it, whatever level they're on. They go through the same thing. You know, I ran into an actor who had ascended to a different level. And I said, hey man, how you like it? How you like it up there with that rarefied air? He says, man, I just got a whole different set of problems now. You know, it's a whole different set of problems. So, you know, it's hard to stay, how can I put this? It's hard to be that objective about your life like that and look at it that way, because like I said, you're always into comparisons and what I have and what I don't have. You don't look at your life that philosophically, you know. Everything is so immediate. You look at all your needs as being immediate, and you know, you don't look at it from an objective philosophical kind of like, what does it all really mean in the end, you know? Or the journey is important. We don't think about our lives like that. Oh, I'm on this journey. And, you know, whatever happens, happens. But if you stop and think about it, you know, I appreciate my dad for that, because he took basically what he was telling me is you really cannot fail. You know, just go for it, and whatever happens, happens, but you can't fail. So that's, I think, what I have to kind of say about that.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I still find myself thinking about it and saying, yeah, but you know.
We all get that.
You know.
So what's up for you in the future? I know you're still doing All American right now. What other projects do you have coming up, or, you know, if you're at liberty to say?
Well, I don't have, I mean, I know I'm in contention for something that I'm not at liberty to say. And I'm just doing one of these podcast dramas of The Tempest. I started work on that in a couple of weeks, which is just a fun project to do that a friend asked me to do. And that's about it right now, you know. But the project that I'm up for, I'll know in February if that's going to happen. And that would be nice. But you know, we'll see.
Well, definitely good luck with that project, obviously. I guess after you've been just so open, I'm not going to even ask any more questions, because it would just seem a little more ridiculous. Like, oh, have you ever thought of writing and directing? You know, it's like,
I have.
Okay.
I have. I've done a little bit of it, but not much. But I just, acting, I guess, always pulls me away. You have to make a decision at some point that I'm going to stop acting and focus on directing. And I've never done that. You know, I'm working on something now as a writer. I wrote a one-man show once and I performed it. And but writing is a solitary experience. And I think being an actor so long, you know, I like that interaction.
Yeah.
It takes me a long time to write something because, you know, but I'm focusing more and more on it. And what I'm working on now, we just did a sort of a test run of it. It's another solo show. And we just did a test run of it to see how what I have so far goes. And it went very well. So I'm polishing it up. and working on that, you know. So
That's
um,
awesome.
you know, just keep trying to keep it moving.
Understandable, definitely. Mhm.
Do you
Yeah.
guys have any interest in the arts in terms of participating in the arts in any way?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm actually a professional filmmaker. I've been doing it 16 years now.
Uh-huh. And you're
I'm
based,
just go ahead.
you based,
Sorry.
you're based where, Andre?
In New York, I'm in
In New
Staten
York.
Island.
It's Staten Island.
hmm
Okay. And you're in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm right now just focusing on trying to write, I guess you could say, other than like film reviews and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm trying to focus on playwriting, short screenplays, and hopefully eventually a feature length screenplay, and also making short films.
What part of Brooklyn are you in?
The Flatbush area. I live on Newkirk Avenue, so I'm like right next to Flatbush Avenue.
Oh, I don't know Flatbush. I lived in Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy. Then I moved to Manhattan in my New York.
Well, I'm kind of right next to Crown Heights, so I'm in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Andre, do you have any more questions?
No, that was pretty much it. I mean, I could ask you about other movies, but I feel like the big ones we really wanted to get out of the way.
Yeah, because I came in here like 5 pages of questions, but you know, just through conversation. Yeah.
How many of those did you ask?
Probably like 5, because just in your answers, you like answered another half of them that I was gonna bring up. So it was just like, oh yeah, he talked about life. Thank God, because I didn't want that particular question. So it's like
you certainly did your research. You did your research. I didn't expect you to be so well briefed on what I had on my career.
Well, I mean, you're a legendary character actor, you know. So not only, well, we have to do research just out of respect, but stuff we've seen growing up that you've been in, you know, it's like, oh, we know half the movies he's been in, but it's just like some of those more hard to find titles, or like Andre with that movie where you're playing a clown makeup being a psychopath. I'm like, yeah, I would have probably never normally known about that film just off the top of my head.
Crazy thing, all that stuff's on like Tubi now. Like all your old films you can find on Tubi, on YouTube, like the stuff you couldn't even get in the video store.
Oh, really? I should go look.
Yeah, just type in your name. You'll be surprised what pops up.
I'll try Serpent and the Rainbow. You know, they would know my name. You know, that was a really fun experience. It was I share this with you before we go.
Yeah,
we didn't talk much about it, but it was an anthropological type of experience because you really submerging yourself in a different culture. I mean, at that time, I think Baby Doc had just left Haiti, and so we did most of it. We did the first 3 or 4 weeks of it in Haiti. Then we went over to Santo Domingo and finished it. So it was just the sights and sounds of the place, you know, and people, like I remember, like I was talking to my mother, I was saying, they want me to come do this film, and it's in Haiti, and the guy has to exhume bodies from graves, and he makes this potion, and blah, 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 blah. And she says to me, and you know, Witness had just been out, and she says to me, with Brent, you know, every film is not going to be a witness, you know. So the question is, can you go down there? She says, you have to remember, their religion is just as real to them as yours is to you. So the question is, can you go down there and put yourself into that, you know, absorb it and play it, and then leave it there and not come home and beat your wife? That's what she said to me. I said, oh, well, yeah, on those terms, if it's just a mental thing, I can do it, you know. So you go down there and you run into people, and you learn about voodoo, you learn about what they're doing, you meet people who are your advisors on the film, you know, and you absorb this culture, and and you learn about the history of it, and little kids are running around telling you about the history of Haiti and you know, the great liberators of the Haitian Revolution, you know, back when the only country to fight off slavery, and these people are really, you know, extraordinary people, you know, that they know their culture, they know their history, and they're willing to teach it to you, you know. So that was really amazing. And then some parts of the country were like going back in time. You know, I remember we took a trip where I was going to meet the character that I played, and you're passing through the countryside and you see the oxen with the yoke on and the rice paddies, you know, and it was like being in 17th century Africa or something. It was just like, where am I now? You know? And so it was a really uniquely rich experience, and an experience that a lot of movies or projects that you work on just don't bring you. You know, the kind of challenge that it brought to all of us was really dealing with the fact that they didn't have the infrastructure, you know, and sometimes trucks would break down or nails get in the tires because the extras want to on strike and they want more money, so they put nails, you know, all these kind of hurdles. So we became so close as a company and cast that for 2 years we would all meet and just have dinner together, just because it took us that long to let go of each other, because it bonded us. You know, it was a unique experience, and it's rare that you get something that challenging. And it wasn't like a big hit movie or anything. It was like one of those B or C horror movies, you know, and I needed it at the time because, once again, we were destitute, you know, had a kid, didn't have a refrigerator in the apartment, you know, had one of those little ice chests that we put the milk and the eggs in. And it was like, oh, a job? Okay, good. You know, so, you know, the business has been a lot of ups and downs and challenges, but it's been rewarding.
Now, speaking of that, there's one last question I do have. Are there any big roles that you were up for that you didn't get that you wish you had gotten?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter like how big the part was, but just in general.
Right. I mean, there's so many of those, man. It's like, where do you start? You know, I'm trying to think of what's the most recent one. I don't know why things go out of my mind. I can't remember. You want a specific role?
Doesn't matter if it's TV or film.
Well, yeah, I just missed out on the part. But see, I can think of it, but then you know you don't want to talk about it because another actress got it. You know, you just want. But you know, if I mention it, you know, it's like, I'd rather them not know. You know, but that happens quite frequently. And there was another part that I didn't get. I don't know who got this one, but I still don't want to name it. But it was the role. It was a role of a doctor, and what you like to get parts that you don't normally always get, something you can be a little different in. And I went through this process of really thought that it wasn't even a big part. Like the other one that I didn't want to mention was a role in a series, and it was a very well written series. It was a well written role, and it was a role that I thought I was perfect for, that I did a great audition for, and was really surprised that it didn't go any further, that then no offer came in. So it really kind of disappointed me. Now this other one, I really thought I had, you know, because I met with the director, we talked, you know, blah, blah, blah. And one of those things, I'll see you soon. And then it never happens because the studio doesn't want to, you know, spend that money on that character and, you know, fly you to that location, you know, and all of that. Or they want you to do it yourself. And you go, well, no, you know. And you know, it was a beautiful scene, a really beautiful scene. that as an actor, you said, I would like to play that scene. And that was recently, and it just really, it took me a while to get over that, you know, when I think about it. It was a disappointment because I thought there was this implied commitment that had been made in the meeting. It's just like if you would say to me, okay, Brent, I'm gonna call you tomorrow, I'll see you, you know, and we're gonna have lunch. And I said, okay, and then tomorrow comes and yeah, well, Andre decided, you know, you know, and he and Jeff, they, you know, they ran into somebody else coming down the street and they took them to lunch, you know. But yeah, that happens. You have to have tough skin, and that's a regular part of the character actor's life. That's a regular part of the actor who has to fight. Like sometimes my manager will say, hey, they're interested in you, but you got to fight for it, which means I got to go in and read, I got to audition, you know. So sometimes I'll say, well, I don't want to fight for that, you know. Well, okay, yeah, I'll fight for this, you know. Right now, it's not I'm just trying to build the body of work and find more interesting things to do, you know, big or small, you know, just keep building the body of work. So when it's all said and done, there it is, you know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to plug, any social media or anything like that?
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again for being a guest on our show. Thank you for being so open. And I kind of wrote something, so let me just read it. So excuse me if I'm not looking at the camera.
Okay.
Okay. It's surreal, you know, anytime we get an interview. So it's just an experience having this conversation, for instance, with somebody, you know, you've watched more or less growing up. Well, I mean, you were an adult. We were growing up.
I was growing up too.
Well, you've gotten more distinguished. We'll go with that. And, you know, you're somebody who we've watched most of our lives on screen in one role or another, you know, different roles, but always, you know, same body, obviously. But, you know, we just want you to know that, like, we respect you and your career and your work so much. And we just really want to thank you for coming on the show. Because, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. But, you know,
cry.
But again, it's like, even when you were telling, you know, your story about your last conversation with your father, it's like, we really appreciate you being so open with us. Because, you know, sometimes, you know, some people just stick to this. Yeah, I don't want to talk about anything personal.
Right.
And it's just like amazing that, you know, you came on the show, you were open with us, you know, you told us the truth about everything. It wasn't like, yeah, I loved working with that guy, sure, or something like that. So I just want to thank you, and just know, you know, we're amazed, and especially, well, I said that, so good. I did come up with it off the top of my head, making my point. But again, thank you. You know,
no problem. You know, like that deal about my father, I thought about it before I said it. But then I thought about it and I said, well, look, that helped me. It may help somebody that's listening to this, you know, it may help somebody.
Yeah.
It may make somebody think about something. Not about whether or not I'm an actor, but just whether or not, what am I doing with what I'm doing? You know, am I, you know, on their journey? It might help them. You know? Exactly.
And that's why we like more conversations than just strictly interview. Let it just flow.
Right. Well, I've enjoyed you guys. I really have. I'm happy to have taken the opportunity to speak with you and to be here. So I hope I'm glad to know that I didn't disappoint you. You know,
not at all.
Never.
And you're more than welcome to come back on at any time, because, like I said, we have more questions.
I still got 4 pages left.
At the rate we're going, it'll take 3 or 4 visits to get through those questions.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it's been nice, guys. You take care of yourself. Stay safe. Stay healthy. You know.
Thank you. You too.
Yes, thank you so much, Brent. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure.